There is a reason that most investors feel like they're doing analysis, but they're really still just guessing. They're not missing information, they're missing classification. Because if you misclassify a business, you may end up overpaying for a product company or underappreciating a rail company and spend years researching without actually compounding. So today, I'm going to give you a tool that ends the guessing. I call it the gates. And by the end of this video, you'll be able to look at any company and answer one very important question. Is this a product fighting on the surface or a rail that sits under civilization? This is episode 4 of the 2 Economies series on my YouTube channel. And yes, this will ruin most stock tips for you, but in a good way. Here's the plan. First, I'll show you the problem, why most analysis stays vague. Then I'll give you 5 gates, observable criteria. And then I'll show you how to use them in a binary filter. Because rails aren't these abstract concepts. Rails pass gates. Most people do analysis like this. Great CEO, big market, cool product, AI, moat. That's not analysis. That's narration. And narration feels smart right up until the stock halves in price. The reason is simple. If you don't have gates, you can't say no. And if you can't say no, you'll hold junk, you'll chase stories, and you'll call it conviction. Owners don't run on conviction. They run on standards. So how do we use the gates? Well, think of it like airport security. To get through, you don't need charisma. You need to pass checks. A company can be profitable, exciting, and still fail the gates. If it fails, it's not a rail. It's a product. And products can still be great investments, but do not confuse them with rails. Gate 1 is the flow gate. A rail must sit on a large, unavoidable flow. Not what do they sell, what flow do they tax? Examples of flows are the payments and commerce, compute, identity, logistics, attention, and energy. If a flow is optional, seasonal, or even trend-based, you're already sitting in product territory. Rails don't beg for demand. They sit where demand must pass. Gate 2 is the choke point gate. A rail must control a narrow waist, a bottleneck, a place where the flow compresses, where it's easier to route through them than go around them. Products expand sideways. Rails compress the world into a pipeline, and pipelines have toll booths. Gate 3 is embeddedness. This is where most moat talk is sloppy. I don't care if users like it. I care if users are trapped by integration. Leaving must be legitimately painful. Switching costs, workflow dependence, contracts, compliance, habit, and retraining. If switching is easy, compounding is fragile. And again, you have to ask yourself, if this company were to vanish overnight, how many other businesses would break? And gate 4 is pricing power. Rails don't need to scream. They just quietly raise the toll. A rail can take a percentage take rate, a subscription, a usage fee, or an embedded margin. And it still gets paid because the flow must move. If a company is always discounting, that's not a rail. That's a product in a knife fight. Gate 5 is the one that separates compounding from growth, increasing returns. The business gets stronger as it gets bigger. Not just bigger, stronger. That can show up as network effects, scale economies, data advantage, trust flywheels, and distribution gravity. Products often get weaker as they scale. More competition, more marketing, more commoditization. rails get more inevitable. So here's the full framework. A true rail passes the flow, the choke point, the embeddedness, the pricing power, and the increasing returns. And this matters because your goal isn't about being right. It's about sovereignty. It's about agency. The difference between renting narratives and owning systems. That is literally the whole mission here. Turning ticket tourists into capital builders, into owners, not spectators. Let's do 2 quick mental models. No deep dive, just classification. In the first example, let's look at a payment network. Flow, commerce moves no matter what. Chokepoint is the network routing. Embeddedness is the integration everywhere. Pricing power, tolls. Increasing returns, network trust plus payment acceptance. The verdict, smells like a rail. And example B, a trendy consumer brand. Flow, it's optional. Chokepoint, none. Embeddedness, low. Pricing power, more like discounts. Increasing returns, usually negative. Competition rises. The verdict, we're dealing with a product. Now, products aren't bad, but if you treat a product like a rail, you'll pay rail multiples for product economics, and you'll wonder why compounding never arrives. Now, here's your homework. Pick one company you own or want to buy and run it through the 5 gates we just covered. If you can't answer a gate clearly, write unknown, because unknown is honest. Vagueness is expensive. In the next episode, we do something that most investors never learn: how rails are born, because rails don't just start as rails. And if you understand the wedge to rail evolution, you'll spot these compounding machines while they look like normal companies. If you want to stay a ticket tourist, there are infinite channels for that. But if you want to build ownership, agency, then subscribe and comment your company along with the gate it passes or fails. I'll be sure to include them in future deep dives.